Lastly, I want to just glance at the Islamic countries. Historically, in the history of Islam, there is no separation of mosque and state. They're very closely fused together. And the whole idea of separation of mosque and state is something they consider almost, by definition, an infidel or pagan idea. This alliance is, of course, especially close in Saudi Arabia. But in Turkey, their great modern leader was Kemal Ataturk, who had been an officer in the Turkish army, and split off. You've all heard the expression "young Turks." Well, there was a group of young Turks who, when the Ottoman Empire collapsed after World War I, they decided that Turkey was going to be a republic, and Ataturk was very insistent. He even had them get a new alphabet. You know, their alphabet is the European Roman alphabet. And they prohibited wearing the veil in public and so forth. Now they have a rather pro-Islamist government of Turkey, but there's a tremendous, let's say, latent ongoing struggle between the secularists and the Islamists in Turkey. If you read the newspaper this morning, the Kansas City Star, a secularist government apparently got a very narrow margin of victory in the recent elections there. And Alawi, he had been, I think, prime minister before, who's the leader of this coalition, one of his heroes is none other than Thomas Paine. And years ago when I was reading in the paper about Alawi, and I thought, wow, Thomas Paine in Iraq, you know. So, and then the last point is, in the United Nations, there is a continuing fight about the issue of human rights. And of course, there are many Muslim nations in the United Nations, and they have become members of various human rights bodies, and they are intent on getting through a prohibition, which wouldn't exactly have legal status, but more like a resolution, against defamation of religions. Well, one person's criticism will be someone else's defamation. So the humanists, and to their credit, the International Humanist and Ethical Union has been very active with others to argue against this as a sort of subtle attack on freedom of speech and freedom of thought. So in the United Nations, this is another struggle that is being going on. So some of the things that we've talked about here have continued to ferment in the centuries since the founding, and they're still with us today, I think you can see. Well, I hope we have time for questions.